Call Ron Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it is always a challenge, and I've said this before, it's always a challenge when you rise at number 7. In particular, what I know about local, teeny-weeny little bit. And I have to say, in response to the question from the honourable member, if I had known as much about local government when I first entered Parliament as I know today, having spent 4 years as the Mayor of Carterton, and elected unopposed in one of those terms, I would have been a better MP. And I think that many of the speeches that I've heard, and sadly a lot of the commentary that's come from ministers as they've sought to justify legislation that they've advanced through this House, have been made from a baseline of pure ignorance about local government matters, a total lack of understanding of the consequences of those pieces of legislation that they put through and inflicted upon the ratepayers and the people of those communities, and which is quite a sad thing. But I'm hopeful that there is a greater degree of understanding now between local government New Zealand and the government, and this bill probably, Mr. Speaker, gives a smidge of hope that there is some meaningful conversation going on between this government and local government, particularly, and which is absolutely essential given the enormous amount of damage inflicted by their erstwhile minister, Mr. Nick Smith, when he rammed through this House and justified the production of the Local Government Amendment Act that he put through back in 2013. And I do recall, as a mayor, sitting in the company of many other mayors and deputy mayors and chief executive officers and senior managers of local government territorial authorities throughout New Zealand, the absolute anger at some of the assertions of this government about what local government was and wasn't doing, how competent they were, how capable they were. And it astonished me to the point that I actually sent an email through to the Minister for Local Government at the time, who's now the Speaker, Mr. David Carter, and copied it into the Prime Minister, making the observation that I couldn't understand why the government would be so rude and behave in such an ill-informed manner and be so derisive of local government, given the large number of National Party card-carrying members who were mayors, deputy mayors and senior councillors within local government incorporated. And I hoped, as I said in the email, I hoped that they expressed their dissatisfaction at the next election. And I know a good many of them certainly did. What stands out of this piece of legislation and the point in time that we've arrived to now in the House is the irony, and I'm going to say to the Honourable Member Phil Twyford last night when he started giving his contribution in the second reading, and I was a little bit gutted because he took my first paragraph off me, but I am going to repeat it here today because I think it actually says something quite pertinent. We are in the second reading. Normally, post a select committee hearing, a time in which this bill would have been put on the table, and New Zealanders, and particularly ratepayers of Auckland, would have had an opportunity to have made submissions to express their views, their concerns, ask their questions, seek some satisfaction, some surety around any of the issues that they might have spotted in this bill. This bill is designed to enhance the hearing process. This process, which we're engaged in right now, ironically, is undermining the parliamentary hearing process. I don't get it. How blatantly obvious must this have been to the Leader of the House and the government whips when the proposition was first put to them that, oh, we've got this item sitting at number 15, we need to bolster up the urgency, how about we chuck this on the table, we'll just flick off the select committee, we'll run it through, ram it through. The truth of the matter is, if the government truly believes in enhancing the hearing processes and expediting more efficiently whilst giving people the opportunity to have their say on the Auckland Unitary Plan through their submissions, if they seriously believe that that is what they are doing through passing this bill, then why would they undermine the credibility of the process of the passage of this bill by removing the hearings process from this bill? I don't get it. Someone over there, maybe Mr. Seymour, because he's, to paraphrase him, he's sometimes a very, very bright chap, but as we know, very, very bright chaps, they can sometimes be quite amazingly thick. Very intelligent people. And, well, there goes Mr. Mouth. What's his name? I keep forgetting it. But he is a whipper, apparently, in the National Party government. But someone surely must have understood the irony of the situation that they were putting on the table right now. That man will find out just how stupid his statements are come 2017 when he wants to come talk to me, won't he? But we'll hold it to that day. And we will move on from here because the ignorance of that man isn't worth commenting on. I would only say to the government, it is sad that we are actually pushing this bill through in urgency. We could have actually had the first reading done a month or so ago. We could have actually moved it through to select committee, and even if we had said, well, it's a very small bill, it's a very tight bill, it's got the support, and looking at the departmental disclosure statement, there's clearly been some very good conversation with Auckland City. Auckland City is on board with the bill. They've been involved in it. I read in the paper that their consultation has been done via emails and other communications. It would appear that if we'd had a select committee, it would have been a pretty straightforward matter from the Auckland City side, but it most certainly would have given the citizens of Auckland an opportunity to come along and voice their concerns. And what would their concerns have most likely have been, Mr. Speaker? If one takes 5 minutes to have a look at the Auckland City website and look at the unitary plan and the processes that have to go through, I mean, it's very clear. Auckland has decided on a vision statement to be the world's most livable city. Of course, to make a vision statement worthwhile, there has to be a plan. This is the unitary plan we're looking at. The plan has to determine what can be built and where. Well, there is no shortage of controversy in Auckland around that very question. What can be built and where? Auckland is suffering right now a massive housing shortage, and it's very clear that the initiatives of the government haven't done anything to alleviate that problem. But Auckland people, quite rightly, in their submissions on the unitary plan, would want to have those conversations to create a higher quality and more compact city. Provide for rural activities. Under the Auckland Unitary Plan and the hearings that would be heard on this, I have no doubt that there are some serious concerns being raised out of Rodney and out of rural Auckland, because whilst people might say that their plan needs to provide for rural activities, that mere statement suggests to me that the people who wrote it actually don't understand rural New Zealand. It's not just about rural activities, and going down to being able to get down to the river for a picnic. This is about how the economic units within the rural part of the Auckland City actually operate and are permitted to operate under the unitary plan. And I have no doubt that amongst those 5,000 submissions that are yet to be heard, there'll be some very strong views from rural Rodney. Mr. Speaker, the bill as it is lays on the table right now is designed to expedite the hearings process. New Zealand First has already said in the first reading that we have no trouble with those provisions. The only concern we had was around reducing the quorum from 3 to 2. Seemed a bit strange, but having concurrent committees running at the same time under different chairs as well seems to fill that gap. It seems to make up some of the concerns we have. But we are, and so I'll leave it there, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, let's have a conversation during the committee stage. We'll have more talk around that quorum, why the Minister thinks that's okay, and we will take the bill from that point. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.